Picture this. There was once a place where the world's greatest minds got together and attempted something that sounds completely impossible. They tried to collect literally everything humanity had ever known. And we're not just talking about a few shelves of books here. They wanted to capture the bleeding edge of mathematics, astronomy, medicine, engineering. They were hunting down poetry, maps of entirely unknown lands, and the records of civilizations that had already been forgotten. It was this magnificent place where global knowledge was gathered under one massive roof. And then, it just vanished. But not overnight, and definitely not in some huge cinematic explosion like the movies always show us. It happened slowly, quietly. It just faded away through fire, war, neglect, and time. Today, in this explainer, we are diving into one of the most heartbreaking losses in human history, the Library of Alexandria.
So what did we actually lose? It's a question that still absolutely haunts historians to this very day. When the greatest concentration of human knowledge on the planet simply disappears, what's the actual cost to human progress? What pure brilliance was erased before it could even be shared with the rest of the world? It is such a fascinating and honestly somewhat painful mystery. Okay, let's really dive into this and see how this whole grand experiment kicked off in the first place.
To truly wrap our heads around the Library of Alexandria, we need to rewind to ancient Egypt, right around 300 BCE. Alexander the Great has died, and his massive empire is being carved up. One of his generals, a guy named Ptolemy I Soter, takes control of Egypt and sets up a brand new capital city, Alexandria. But Ptolemy didn't just want a busy port city where people traded goods. He had this incredibly radical vision for the era. He wanted a global center of knowledge. He wanted to draw the greatest scholars, thinkers, and innovators from every single known civilization to one definitive intellectual capital.
To make that dream a reality, he ordered the construction of a massive intellectual complex known as the Mausoleum, which literally translates to Temple of the Muses. Now, here's where a lot of people get it wrong. This wasn't a library in the modern sense, a quiet building where you whisper and check out a paperback to read on the couch. No, the library was just one piece of this massive puzzle. The Mausoleum was an active, living, breathing research institute. It was a translation center, decoding texts from different languages, a school for scholars, and just this incredibly vibrant hub of dynamic research.
But that brings up a pretty big question. How do you actually gather all the writings of the entire known world? Well, you get aggressive. When ships docked at Alexandria's bustling port, the authorities weren't just checking for spices or grain. Step 1, they literally searched the arriving ships for scrolls. Step 2, if they found any, they confiscated them on the spot and sent them straight to the library to be copied by scribes. And step 3, which is honestly my favorite part, they kept the original scroll for the library and just handed the newly made copy back to the ship's owner. In the ancient world, knowledge had essentially become the ultimate currency, and Alexandria was hoarding it.
So what did all that aggressive confiscation and nonstop copying actually amount to? Imagine walking through the grand halls of this place. You'd be surrounded by row upon row of wooden shelves, absolutely packed to the ceiling with carefully copied texts. Now, historians do debate the exact numbers, but it's estimated that at its absolute peak, the library held anywhere from 40,000 to a staggering 400,000 scrolls.
But honestly, the sheer volume of scrolls isn't even the most impressive part. It's what those scrolls actually represented. They were pulling from everywhere. We're talking texts from ancient Egypt, Greece, Mesopotamia, India, Persia, across Africa, and beyond. This was a truly global, unprecedented effort. Alexandria had completely transformed into the undisputed intellectual capital of the ancient world. For the first time ever, they were actually succeeding in gathering human history into one single place.
And yet, this brings us to what historians call the haunting unknown. Experts believe those hundreds of thousands of scrolls contained things like the lost plays of legendary Greek dramatists. They held early scientific theories that predated modern discoveries by literally centuries. They were maps of the known world far more accurate than anyone would have thought possible back then, along with advanced medical texts that heavily influenced later civilizations. But the haunting part, the part that keeps people up at night, we don't know exactly what else was in there. We can easily measure what survived history, but we absolutely cannot measure what didn't.
But let's focus on what we do know, because it's mind-blowing. This place was buzzing with brilliant minds, making discoveries that show just how advanced they really were. Take Eratosthenes, for example, a mathematician and astronomer who astonishingly calculated the exact circumference of the Earth entirely without modern technology.
Then you have Euclid, the father of geometry, whose foundational work is literally still being taught in math classes today. And we can't forget Hero of Alexandria, an engineer who designed early mechanical devices, some of which were actually powered by steam. Over 2,000 years ago, people were messing around with steam-powered mechanisms. They were rivaling modern engineering, all in this one place built entirely on curiosity.
But, as we know, even the greatest center of learning couldn't outrun the fragility of time. Now, we really need to clear up a massive myth here. There's this super pervasive idea that the Library of Alexandria was destroyed overnight in this single, dramatic, apocalyptic fire that just wiped out all ancient wisdom in one go. The reality? It's far less cinematic, but honestly, maybe even more tragic. It wasn't an explosion. It was a slow, quiet unraveling. A very painful fade brought on by time, war, and sheer neglect.
If we trace this slow unraveling, we obviously start with its founding around 300 BCE. Fast forward a bit to 48 BCE, and we hit the first major blow. During Julius Caesar's involvement in an Egyptian civil conflict, parts of Alexandria were set on fire. The flames spread in the chaos, and it's believed this damaged or destroyed portions of the collection, though historians still debate exactly how much was lost that day. But the truth is, the library was probably already in a steady decline even before Caesar showed up. We move all the way down the timeline to 400 CE, marking the destruction of the Serapeum, which was sort of an extension or daughter library of the original institution during political and religious conflicts in the late Roman Empire. It literally took centuries for this grand institution to fall apart.
And why did it fall apart? Well, empires changed hands. The funding dried up. Scholars either left for safer places or passed away. You see, massive knowledge institutions require profound, long-term stability to thrive. As the political and religious landscape of the ancient world kept shifting and reshaping the region, that beautiful dream of universal knowledge simply faded out. Parts of the collection were likely relocated, some destroyed, but a lot of it was just left to rot. It didn't vanish in a flash of light. It disappeared the way many things do, until one day, everyone woke up and it was simply gone.
Now, this is the part of the story that genuinely hurts to think about. Entire schools of philosophy just disappeared. Detailed historical records of early civilizations vanished completely. Scientific theories were lost to the wind, only to be painfully rediscovered centuries later by other people. I really want you to take a second and imagine this. What if early astronomy had just continued, totally uninterrupted? What if all that ancient engineering knowledge had been perfectly preserved and built upon? What if medical progress hadn't been stalled by centuries of loss? Human progress as we know it might look vastly, vastly different today. Ultimately, the story of Alexandria serves as a massive warning sign for all of us. The library represents one of the single greatest concentrations of knowledge humanity has ever attempted to build. But it proves that knowledge is deeply, inherently fragile. Not because it's hard to create, but because it can disappear infinitely faster than it takes to remember it. It is a really stark reminder of just how vulnerable human progress is when we don't actively protect and prioritize it.
But hey, it isn't all doom and gloom. There is a silver lining here. Even though the physical stone and wood of the library are long gone, its fundamental idea, that never died. The dream of collecting universal knowledge kept going. We saw it thrive in the magnificent libraries of the Islamic Golden Age. It survived through monks meticulously copying texts in medieval monastic libraries across Europe. And today, it's evolved into our massive digital archives and modern universities. Think about it for a second. Every single encyclopedia, every digital database, every time you type a question into a search engine today, that is an echo of Alexandria's vision. They are all just modern attempts to create that one single place where all human knowledge is gathered and shared.
So the absolute greatest lesson we can take from Alexandria isn't just about how grand and ambitious it was. It's about its vulnerability. Even the most advanced center of knowledge in the entire ancient world couldn't preserve everything. The Library of Alexandria might be gone, but its silence speaks volumes to us today. It reminds us that human knowledge is incredibly powerful, absolutely, but only if we actively work to protect it. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final thought to chew on. If a monumental, world-changing institution like Alexandria could slowly slip away, what are we losing today, right now, without even noticing?